All right. So I just want to kind of make this recording so this way we have this last bit of tutorial all set. And then later today, I'll also go back and do the previous 2 days. This way then you'll have a collection of all of what we covered. So this way you can reference it, if you ever want to. All right, so picking up from last time with the image that we had here. One thing I want to kind of go over is when we ended up having this issue where we have this kind of like cropped off right here, and then over here on the bottom left, we want to be able to, have that ability to, use it, at the bottom of the design without having to have this sitting on the left hand side, or having to crop it basically like this, and you end up losing a majority of that, or always having it to the right hand side. So you don't ever want to have flat edges in a design that you're cropping out, is basically what's happening. All right, so before if we let this just simply let Photoshop clip it out, you can see that it's going to be a little bit of an issue. I will tell you, clipping out hair is one of the most frustrating things. So beware of that. But let's say I now want to clip this out manually, the best I can, kind of going through the hair, and then I need to deal with this, right? So my clipping path at the moment from the previous classes, I just allowed that to kind of sit straight on the right hand side, and then over here this is just straight kind of coming down here. All right, so we kind of talked about changing, going up here, going to our image size, making sure that this is going to be high res, making sure that we have this all three of these sitting here, not selecting resample and changing it to 300. The next thing that you would want to do in this case is I want to add more to the canvas. So I want more space over here, and I want more space over here. So I come up over here, go to canvas size, and then in here, this is where the width and height is. All right, so if I only needed this, right? So let's say I'm going to ignore the right-hand side at the moment. Then I could push this over here, because then when I add to this, it's going to add beyond that, right? So if I end up adding, I'm going to add 200, hit OK, and now you can see I end up having all this extra space here. Now to kind of bring a little bit more of that shirt, just to kind of keep it away from having it as a straight shot down. All right. On this side here, I do the opposite. Now I can go back in here, go to canvas size. Now push this to the left, and really, I only need another 100 maybe. And then I can have a little bit of space to kind of do this. All right. So now one of the tools you can use, let me turn that off, is you can use like a cloning tool. So in here, I just want to add a little bit more. So I click in here, I go to my cloning stamp. Now the way this works, it makes a copy of your initial selection. All right. So let me do something that is not going to make sense. So I'm going to hold my option key. So you can see when I hit option, I have like almost like a crosshair symbol. So I'm going to click and then let go of everything. So now when I click the next time and hold, you can see on the where the initial selection was is that crosshair. But then as I go through, it's just making a copy of exactly where that is. All right. And then if you need to make another one, then you do another click, and then you click in, and then you can see now it's moving this way. All right. So this helps when you're trying to, get rid of blemishes, get rid of issues with the design itself. Sometimes we have other options in here that I'll show you in a moment that can kind of fix those things. But the cloning stamp, you have more control over that. All right. So in here, what I want to do is I kind of want to just like kind of bump this out a little bit. So then I can just very quickly use my pen tool and, bring some of that element in. So I'm trying to find areas where this comes out and I'm adding a little bit more to the actual shirt. All right. So you're kind of trying to find that little space, and you're kind of just extending it out a little bit. So you're finding other areas in the design, and you can see I don't care what all of this looks like because I'm clipping it out anyway. I'm just trying to get this to kind of be a little bit more rounded, so this way then it's not this flat piece here. All right. Then over here, I want to continue this down like so. So I'm going to click, probably say here, then get the edges. Now you can't simply just do and click once because then it's going to look fake. So you have to keep resampling and say, all right, this is coming this way. So now I want over here. All right, and now you can see this kind of dark area right in here. Now I'm going to click here, and so you keep your left hand on the Option key and keep clicking to resample other areas. All right, so now as I'm kind of using my pen tool, I'm going to be able to have all of this sitting going across this way. So now I no longer have that straight shot coming down. All right, so I'm going to bring back my pen tool, my path rather, and then in here I can click on this. I'm going to make an anchor point in between these so I can delete it, and then I'm going to pick this back up. You can go beyond underneath, off the page. Okay, so this way then when I bring this into Illustrator, this will be all clipped out. All right, then I come over here, I can bring this down a little bit, and then I can fix this. Add a point, delete it, and now done. All right, this here, we go back to clipping path, path 1, hit OK, and then now we're going to save this as the EPS. Actually, before I do that, so I never change this to CMYK. All right, and actually, before I even do that, I want to discuss, because I want to bring all these into the actual design. So let's bring this up in here. And I want to use this in the background of this. I definitely don't want this color here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Command I to invert it. All right. By doing that, I'm taking away that color. And I also want to, from what I showed last class, I want to replace the orange and maybe bring in more of a blue tone into that design. All right. The other thing in here, see this little, what is that, bird? Yeah, there's a bird in my design. So you can see on its own, it's sitting like this. So you can use the cloning stamp because you have more control, oops, of where that is. Where'd it go? There it is. So you can use this and then click and remove that bird, right? Or in certain cases like this, you can sometimes use the healing brush tool, which is right here. Don't rely on this as 100% of your time. The cloning stamp you have control of. What this is going to do is essentially the same thing. So you're going to come over here, you're going to kind of like just use this, and what it's doing is it's resampling pixels from around it to replace it. There are times you use that, it is perfect. Like this. Done. Same thing. It would have been whether I used the cloning stamp or this, but there are going to be times that you try and use it and it is going to look really funky. Almost like using AI to kind of create a composition for you. It's going to have 6 fingers. It's going to have some sort of weird anomalies happening. So if you can use it and this is going to save you time, use it. If that doesn't work, you're going to have to use the cloning stamp. All right? All right, so now this is all set. I'm going to hit Command I because I want this. I'm going to make sure my file's set up good. CMYK. Then I'm saving this as a TIFF. Now that's done. All right, so now I want to replace the orange for this. So I'm going to go to adjust and then go to my replace color. I'm going to click here. I want to bring in a little bit more of a blue. There we go. And then here. There we go. So now you can see that it kind of went a little beyond, which we can go back in and adjust. So now we hit this. Oops, not purple. I want to take away a little bit of that saturation. All right, so I hit OK. Now, remember from last class, the history brush, which is, where are you? Right here. So my history brush, I got to go into my history, and I'll go back to this. Nope, I gotta go back to. Oh, why are you not letting me? There we go. All right. So what's happening is when you use the history brush, if too much has changed, so you can see the CMYK was too much of a difference. The other thing that would have happened would have been when I changed the canvas size. That wouldn't have let me. So there's only so far you can go back to change the actual previous state. So now I can click this, go through, make sure my hands are all set. And bring a little bit of that. Oops. And I think that's it. Yep. All right. So now I want to go to File, Save As. Actually, I showed you about cropping this, so that way we can make it a little bit more manageable when we bring it in. Save As. What's going on here? I have to flatten it. That's right. Layer, flatten. Now save as EPS. All right. Good. Good. And then let's go back into our document. All right. That was from the previous one. All right. So in here, you want to start bringing in the elements into your design. Remember to have your links open here so we can see, what the elements are going to be for their the resolution, making sure that you're always staying above the 300. Whether you are going to place or if you are going to embed, I typically will always go to open with Illustrator and then copy it and then paste it in. So this way now that is embedded into the actual design. All right, I'm going to send it to the back. And then you can see my resolution right over here. It's 300. And I can shrink this down a little bit. Okay. Now I go to here, open with. Now I have my file in here with this. All right. So now I have all of my elements. You have to have everything in your actual document to be able to stop playing around with the layout. Okay. One of the things that sometimes helps, right off the bat, there are times that you can, let's say I'm going to have this as white, but I want to allow a little bit of the background to kind of come through. All right. in there you can have your transparency option, right? So I'm going to go in here, I'm going to say, all right, what if I do 80% and then allow some of that to kind of come through. Can I go down to 60? And then you can see that it's allowing a little bit of the background to come through. You can get away with that with larger text, absolutely. But with small text, it's not going to happen. This is going to definitely have to pretty much stay, solid. So this way we can read the text coming across the design. Now, one of the things that you want to be careful of, right? So with this in the background, you can see the shift in the background color going from, shades of light to dark and then really dark. So the one thing you want to be careful of is having too much of a contrast. So if this was super white and then this becomes very dark, that's going to become an issue for this, right? If I look at the design over here in the background, you can see that this part here is probably a little bit better for the text because it has less of that jump from the lighter into the darker, right? So maybe I need to reverse this. Maybe I want this to be on the left and this to be on the right. So I can come up here, I can go to my reflect tool. When you have the reflect tool, you can then just click, hold shift, and rip across to the other hand side. If you don't hold shift and then you try and do this, you can see what's happening with the actual design. So you want to click, hold shift, and then just move your cursor all the way to the other side of this. So now I can have this text sitting in this area here that really isn't being affected with this. And now I can have this, maybe this kind of sits up here, kind of covers a little bit of the text. Now I can, stop playing around with, the size of what this is going to be and where this should be. All right. Now remember, when you are dropping in text and you just want this to be here, you're going to click on the screen. So this way then you end up having a single text line. When you are bringing in a paragraph of text, you are going to click and drag to create a text box. The reason that's important is right in here, I want the ability to change the width of this text in relation to what I want in the negative space here. This, I want the ability to kind of change the size, not so much the size of the text box. So it's very important to have the distinct two different ways of having those two different methods of bringing in the text in. All right. Good. The other thing is you may not use this. Let's say this is going to be a terrible idea, but let's say I wanted to really blend this image in with the background. All right. Underneath the transparency. So obviously I can go in here and I can change the transparency to allow some of that background to come through. But the other thing that you can do is over here you have a normal, right? So that leaves everything alone. It's not really allowing the two different elements to kind of start working together. But you have other options that you can play around with, right? So if I hit multiply, what that's going to do, it's going to allow the background and the foreground to then kind of come together and blend those two elements. All right. There is different things that you can kind of play around with, but ultimately, sometimes it will bring like a unique way forward to kind of like bringing in that connection between images. The other thing that's very useful in that is when you're trying to work with text. All right, so let's get this back to 100. And then I was going to be using a different color, and then I start playing with this. So then you can see by changing the color, I'm allowing a lot of that connection between what was in the background. A terrible idea, but this is useful. Say you're using a background that is a little bit more subtle, like a paper texture. This comes in handy when you really want the text to kind of become part of the actual background, right? So almost looking like it's part of it, as if like you were taking a pen and actually writing on that parchment or whatever that texture of the paper would be. So this is definitely something that can become useful. It's definitely something that, in this, as you can see here, not useful. All right, let's do that. Bring that back. All right. So when you're coming with different colors, you want to make sure that you do have a bit of a contrast. And here, I'm probably definitely would end up using, if I was choosing this background, probably keeping it white. It allows everything to kind of stand out. But if you do end up wanting to have smaller text, have that contrast, then you do want to end up figuring out what that background is going to give you, and then bringing in a color that is going to keep a nice contrast for you. All right. When you start working out these ideas, you can create swatches for yourself. So this way, then you're not remembering what these numbers are. All right. So underneath, you have your color, and then you'll have your swatches as well. In here, you can see like these are the default swatches that it's going to give you. If I'm liking this color and I want to be able to reuse it again, then I can come over here and I can hit the plus symbol, and then it's going to tell me, what this is going to be. I can change this. I can say this is like copy text, and then hit OK. And now it's going to add that as a swatch for me, right? So later on, if I'm bringing this in and I really wanted to use that color again, all I got to do is click on that. All right. Okay. Good. When you are looking to start bringing together elements, right? And you want to figure out what the hierarchy is going to be. And then you want to think about, all right, what are the important elements, and how do I start grouping these together? So what you want to look at is the proximity of the different pieces that you have to work with. So, with the name of the actual social issue that I'm working here, do I want, for instance, the statistic to kind of attach itself to the name depression, or do I want it to work itself here? Do I want people to see, this first, then this, or do I want them to see this and then kind of start seeing this here? So you want to start thinking about the grouping and kind of bringing in negative space to help break up those elements. All right. Sizing and scaling obviously is important, right? So I have this, kind of coming all the way across, but if it becomes much smaller, you can see that changes the hierarchy of the actual information that's being delivered. If I end up having this, huge, and then this becomes much smaller, now you can see that this becomes primary, and then you're working down here as a secondary and then tertiary, right? So you want to think about how you are using scaling, not just making everything as wide as it can be, but you want to think about what is the most important, what's second and third, and so forth. All right, so sizing and proximity of the element across the entire document is crucial to how you are delivering the information to the person looking at this. Remember complementary typefaces if we're using serif versus sans serifs. So if we end up choosing Futura and then I end up choosing Helvetica, those aren't complementary, right? They're too similar. So it really wouldn't make sense. I would want to choose something that, has a contrast between those two. There's a sharp difference. Or definitely choose a typeface that's going to have multiple weights. That's going to allow me to break up that information, into a hierarchy. All right. All right. So the next thing is, we're going to look at throughout the semester a lot of different ways to set up a document using different systems. The first one for this project, I want to talk about rule of thirds. All right. So generally speaking, when you're kind of figuring out a design, you really want to give yourself negative space to work the information into. All right. So what you can do is you can set up a grid to kind of just give you an aid. Okay. So in there, I want to, let's bring, all right. So I have this in here. I'm going to create a rectangle inside my margins. All right. Go to Object, go to Path, and then go to Split into Grid. All right. when I click this, it's going to give me a way of creating a grid. Hit preview so you can see exactly what it is that you're doing. But essentially, we want to make it into a 3x3 grid. So I hit this twice, and now you can see I've created a quick little grid here. I hit OK, and I hit Command 5 to make it into a guide. The reason this is helpful is that typically the image that you have going on, you want to kind of be working inside this area here that allows you to open up this. Okay, I can make this a little smaller and then kind of drop it over here. So this way then you're not getting to the point where you're putting it dead center. If everything is dead center, then basically everything is going to be dead center. So if for some reason I had to have this dead center, then what size does this need to be allowing information sitting here, right? Going all the way down. It just doesn't work. You want to be able to use space in your design by having this grid here. It allows you to kind of figure out, all right, if I'm using this and kind of working it only in this column here, this is opening up this column and a little bit more to bring text into. You get to a point where, to be honest, you're never going to need to drop this in. You're always going to be looking at a design and just working the negative space into there. But this is helpful, when you're starting, just making sure that you're giving yourself enough space to kind of work your information into. All right. Good. Awesome. So then the two things, the last two things, you have to add in probably the least significant, but so this is one thing. When you are working out a design, you as a designer, you should have that ability to say, is this important to the design? How necessary is it? And ultimately, if the answer is it's not, then it doesn't belong in the design, right? Design isn't always about adding elements to the canvas. It's also about subtracting and removing. For this here, the one thing I really wanted to get across is when you need to have a little bit of information, does it need to be delivered in this way? Do you always have to have exactly what's being sent to you? The first thing is, when we are typing out or putting in print URL, you never need the HTTPS, right? You don't need that. And you really don't even need the www. But sometimes there will be people that want that triple W only because they want to say, hey, I definitely want people to know that it's a website. Obviously, even if we saw this, people are going to know that this is a website. Now, how useful is this information to somebody? If somebody really wanted to learn more about this, are they going to, type that in? Not happening, right? So that's when you can, deliver another means for them to actually get to that URL. So then you can use your Adobe account. You can use Express. All right. So in here, you go into Adobe Express, and let me start it from scratch. All right. So you go in here. Generate QR code is where we're going. So you can see that we have Express right here. So you click this, and then you would type in the URL. Now I do need the HTTPS. Copy. All right. So then you get this in here. The format, PNG, is just going to give you a flattened design, right? You're not going to be able to do anything with it. So click this. And over here, you can get an SVG. An SVG is going to be an Illustrator vector element that you can bring in and change the color to what you want. All right. So we click this. The color is insignificant because we can change it. And then you can choose a style. You can have the rounded, so you can see the design changing there, or you can just do dots. Over here, those are the borders. Do we want rounded or circles? And then finally, if you're going to have circles, it makes sense to have the dot, right? Then you hit download. So then when you have this, Oops, because I already have it right there. Replace. We can right click, open with, and then go to our Illustrator. All right. Now, when you have this, there's always like a little dot up in here that you need to get rid of. So just if you select everything, you can see that it's kind of going on beyond there. So just click up in the top left and delete. And then now we can select everything, copy, close, and then you can bring it in here. All right. Now, the inside of the design, that's where the color is. All right, so if we were to just click and change the color, everything is going to change. So you got to use your white arrow to go in and click inside the dot, and then in there we can change the color of the actual QR code. And then we can scale it down. These colors are horrendous. I'm not suggesting that they are good. And then you can bring this into the actual design itself, and then maybe we end up having a little tag saying to learn more, click here, whatever actionable text that you would want. You could also include the actual URL in there, so this way people know what it is that they're actually going to be going to. All right. Now, remember what this is. This isn't, even though that we're printing this on 11 by 17, it is not an 11 by 17 poster that we are creating. It's for a much larger design, right? So, try and think of, if this is sitting here, think about where this is. This is going to be, kind of sitting down here, right? So that means that's here. So think about where that is in relation to a person. Is that too low? Should it be a little bit higher? Should, if you want someone to be interacting with a design element, you don't want them kind of, bending over trying to, hit the QR code. You want it to make it easier for the people. Think about where things are at eye level. Always think about how someone is interacting with your design. You always want to be asking that. Where is this going to be placed? All right. If you don't ever answer that, then your decisions are, based on nothing. It's just based on what's on your screen. You're always designing something that it's meant to go out into the real world. You want to be asking those questions. So that is everything here. Bringing your designs in. Now it's like you can actually have fun. Start working out different ideas. Maybe, you bring in other elements. Maybe you end up saying, all right, I really, need, to start having some sort of footer in here to, maybe allow this to kind of, sit away from everything. So you can bring elements in. That's what I kind of want to start seeing next class. Remember the artboard tool. Once you end up having a design and you get to a certain point, you can make a copy of it and then start going in a completely different direction. All right. The last thing that I really want to discuss is inside your cloud, right? You have your typekit, your Adobe fonts in here. Click on that, and it's going to bring up all of the available typefaces that's within Adobe. Okay. So in here, when you're looking for different typefaces, I think it's important to actually type out what it is that you want these to look like. This is not changing. There we go. So this way, then you can see, what the word. So in this case, I want to know what, this is going to look like for the typeface. On the left-hand side, you can see that they have different tags you can very quickly click on. It's going to break it down for you. I think personally I wouldn't use this, because then potentially you might end up missing a certain typeface that would be perfect for your design. Instead, I would definitely use your classifications, right? So here you have your sans serif, which is going to basically be, your typeface that is straight on, that is not going to have any kind of serif whatsoever. Your serifs are going to be right here. The slab serif is a serif that is going to be squared off. right? So that's a slab serif. You have your handwritten script that you kind of go through. And then you got your monospace. I personally, I don't like monospace. But again, if that is something that you really want to bring in, I think there are definitely designs that could work with that. And then you have your handwritten, which is, should be more or less similar to a script, but just less uniform in the way it's being developed. And then you end up having, the different properties. So if you're looking something that's going to be lightweight, that's going to be important too. If you're looking for something that's going to have bold, if you're going to have something that you want to have expanded or contrast, condensed rather, right? Remember, with this project, you can't simply say, all right, I need this to be like this. You can't murder the type. If you want a condensed typeface, then you need to find a condensed typeface that has that option for you, okay? Your X height is going to be the minuscule letters that, go up high. So if you want a very low X height, you're looking at a little bit more old style if you look like Baskerville. But if you're looking for something that is going to be a high X height, that's like the more, pretty much a lot of the 20th century typefaces that were developed later on for screen. All right. So you have all of these options as you're kind of going through. That's going to be useful. Then once you say you find something that you really want and you want that to be installed, then this is where you would activate it. So by adding the family to your design, right? So I click this, it's going to go through. It's letting me know it's there. Perfect. And now you can see it's in there. And now across all of my Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop, and InDesign, that typeface is available. Okay? So that's how you would add new typefaces. All right, so that is it. That's the end of tutorials. Later on today, I'm going to go back to the previous 2 days. So this way, then you'll have all of that to kind of reference. But now it's the exciting part. Now it's like actually bringing, the designs together and start seeing, what you're doing. The main thing that I really, really hope that you take from this first lesson is, why you are designing this. All right. What is the purpose of the design? And ultimately, am all of my decisions heading for success for that reason, that purpose. All right. But good luck. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Have a great weekend. Again, I apologize for having to cancel class yesterday. It was just not a good day. But I will see you on Monday. So have a good one.